We're with David Shapiro. David is a criminal defense attorney in San Diego, California. He's agreed to answer an online question related to a grand jury. Well, with that said, David, let's get into the question that was asked. This question was from William. He said, there was a drug bust involving some of my friends. Some arrests were made, but now I hear that the case is being presented to a grand jury and that some of us might be indicted. What is the difference between a grand jury and a regular jury?
Okay, well, the difference between a grand jury and a regular jury is pretty straightforward. A regular jury is if the case actually proceeds to trial. In California, in state court, it's 12 jurors get picked and they need to unanimously decide whether or not the case or the charges have been proven against the accused beyond a reasonable doubt. And they need to be unanimous. What I mean by that is in a regular jury, all 12 jurors need to agree beyond a reasonable doubt. So if it's 11-1 for guilty, that's not a conviction. If it's 6-6 for guilty or not guilty, that doesn't result in a conviction. A grand jury has a different burden of proof as well, because in a criminal jury, it's proof beyond a reasonable doubt at trial. Grand jury is a way where a prosecution may proceed by way of grand jury indictment instead of going to a preliminary hearing. The burden, though, is the same pretty much. Is it more likely than not that a crime was committed? More likely than not, the accused committed it. Now, with a grand jury, it's not guilt or not guilt or innocence or anything like that. It's that lower burden of proof, and it's a step in the process that the prosecution needs to take. So jurors at that point are deciding it with a significantly lower burden of proof, and they're not, or their decision is not resulting in a conviction. Their decision just means charges will be brought against the accused. So in your situation, in the event that the grand jury hears evidence and they return a true bill or a true finding, what that means is it's almost like the criminal court case against you or against who's ever charged has been fast forwarded past the preliminary hearing and will pick up from that point onward. And what will happen is after the grand jury indictment, the people who are charged in the indictment will have their arraignment. They will enter a not guilty plea, and then they will have a readiness conference, sort of like they would have had if they had the case from beginning to end. Another difference, and a major difference between a grand jury and a regular jury, is the defendant's right to be present. In a criminal jury, obviously, the criminally accused has a right to confront and cross-examine all witnesses against them. Usually their attorney will get up there and ask questions of prosecution witnesses. Grand jury, we don't have that right. So if I'm your attorney, I'm not present in the grand jury. There's nothing I can do about that. You're not present in the grand jury. Now, certainly we would get a transcript of what was said and done and what evidence was presented, so we can challenge the sufficiency of the grand jury's ruling or their decision. But we're not there to ask questions. So in California, particularly in San Diego, where the majority of my practice is located, prosecutors rarely go by route of the grand jury. They usually go by route of the preliminary hearing. As a defense attorney, and particularly the criminal defense attorney, I like that preliminary hearing a lot better than a grand jury because I have some involvement. I have some control, and more importantly, on behalf of my client, he or she has a right to be there and observe firsthand the evidence or lack thereof against them. Grand jury, we don't have that right. But like I said, not a lot of cases are prosecuted by way of the grand jury in California. Usually what we see are white collar cases that are very paper intensive. A lot of times we'll see those types of cases go before the grand jury in California, particularly in San Diego. And also these drug cases where there's multiple defendants, we'll see that go by way of the grand jury sometimes. And also like auto theft, if it's a big like auto theft racket, we'll see those cases go by the grand jury. And a major difference also is it's a lot more secretive because the defendants and their attorneys aren't there. A lot of times prosecutors go that route because that way they can present evidence without information getting leaked to the public, information getting leaked to possible other suspects, information that could possibly adversely affect their ongoing investigation. So that's another main difference between a grand jury and a regular criminal jury, which applies more to trial.
Excellent. If you have any other questions on that for David, he's agreed to answer it in the comments section below the video. Thanks for your time, David.
Yeah, sure. My pleasure. And I can always be reached at 619-295-3555. Thank you so much.